Yeah, I think there was a good reason why this was the last slot to be filled, because up against Peter Bowditch, and I really thought, should have thought about putting a swear word into the name of my talk or something. I'm Jason. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm involved in a number of projects in the Freethought community. Probably the one that takes up most of my time is organising the Global Atheist Convention, which was held in 2010, and another one, hopefully you all know about it, in 2012, which is going to be in April. I've also been working as a spokesperson for the Atheist Foundation of Australia, and I serve on the board of the Rationalist Society of Australia. I'm a somewhat active member of the Victorian Skeptics and a part of the Young Australian Skeptics. But back in 2008, which is what I want to give my talk on today, I was part of the founding committee and eventually became the president of the University of Melbourne Secular Society. And in my final year of uni, I got together with about 10 or so students from different universities across all of the states around Australia, and we created an organisation which we called the Freethought University Alliance. I just want to elaborate a little bit about my journey and how I became involved in this movement. Up until the age of 17, I was pretty apathetic when it came to issues of religion and didn't really care much for science or anything like that. And this all changed for me when I went to the United States on student exchange, and I was situated in Kansas, which is like the buckle of the Bible Belt. And this really sort of forced me to make up my mind about what I believe in, and what sort of, basically, what happened to me was, it was actually the second day I was there in Kansas, I was whisked off to a youth group. And some people say, oh, you know, if you're a non-believer, why didn't you say, oh, I don't believe in that, don't go to it. But going to exchange is about experiencing a different culture, and that's just what they did over there, so I was more than happy to go along. And it was actually the very first youth group session we had. The pastor got up and explained that, you know, it's generally understood that the earth is about 6,000 years old, and all sort of stuff. And I sort of looked around at people were nodding, and I was like, you know, I hadn't studied biology, but I was pretty sure it was a fact. And this caused me to read, basically, and to figure out and want to ask questions and debate. Taught myself how to think critically, discovered Richard Dawkins, discovered SGU, and basically all went from there. And then coming back to Australia, when I went to university, I was basically on the lookout for people who I had common interest with. So basically, I'll start talking about the Alliance, and I'll get back to on some of the stuff about what we actually do on campus. But the University Alliance is a coalition of all of the atheist and skeptical and rationalist and humanist campus groups that all sprung up completely independently of one another in a small time frame of about 1 or 2 years. And basically, as the student leaders of these groups, we wanted to create a network which we could begin to sort of unify this movement, begin to work together, begin to grow it as well. And we were very much aware that in North America there are already groups that exist, such as CFI on campus and the Secular Student Alliance. They've existed for many years and are doing a really great job. But I mean, we thought that even though they try really hard to have an international focus, they're very much centered on North America. And what we found was that not just is our culture and people's attitudes in Australia very different to that in America, but also the sort of campus culture is different as well. You know, in America you've got dorms, and a lot of people actually move out of home to go and live on campus, and so it's a different sort of community. In Australia you've got student unionism, and it's a sort of a different environment. So what we wanted to do is basically create an organisation that was by Australians for Australian campus groups. And we've actually worked closely alongside CFI on campus and the Secular Student Alliance as well. I want to make a quick mention that the Australian Skeptics were one of the 4 organisations that provided some financial assistance to the Alliance to help us get started and sort of get our feet on the ground as an organisation. So Haran and all of you guys, it really helped us a lot, and yeah, we wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't for that initial startup support. But the question I want to actually address in this talk today is why I think it's important for the wider skeptical community to do what we're doing. And I mean, I do care pretty strongly about the wider skeptical community in the sense that I absolutely think that the promotion of science and reason will lead to a more rational and compassionate society. And I think that a strong campus movement is a valuable and essential ingredient to grow and strengthen the movement as a whole. Why? Well, first of all, people attending the university are usually young. They're usually at that sort of moment in their life when they're trying to figure out their own worldview and trying to figure out what they're passionate about, trying to figure out what they want to do with their lives, and often wanting to meet new people and form friendships that often will last for a lifetime. And in sort of our increasingly materialistic capitalist society, universities are becoming a lot like machines to churn out degrees. And so the role of clubs in our universities here in Australia is becoming ever more important to students to help them connect with people who are like-minded, build lasting rather than fleeting friendships when it comes to being in a university hall and only having that whole year to get to know them, and then you move on to another subject, another course or something like that, and it's hard to keep in contact. Also, it helps the clubs and societies community helps students to explore and develop their own passions alongside what they're studying. I mean, you might be studying teaching, you might be studying engineering, but you might be passionate about skepticism, or you might be passionate about whatever. And I think that the natural extension of this, we want to challenge and question our own knowledge to help form our own worldview. And the natural extension of this is to begin to get active and try and affect change. And I think the infrastructure that the clubs and society scene provides really helps enable that. I think, and on campus, like when you go to university and you see all these different sort of clubs that students can sign up to. I mean, you've got sporting clubs and political clubs, chess clubs, activist clubs, religious clubs, and anyone who's set foot on a campus lately will know that there's quite a variety of choices on the ladder. I think, at the very least, I think that skeptical groups, atheist groups, secular groups, at the very least, have to be a choice among all of these different groups. You have to be seen as a thing that people can get involved in. Having these sort of groups, it doesn't just transform the perspectives and the knowledge of the students who join your club and come along to your meetings and be engaged with your club, but it also affects the students that don't sign up to the club, simply just because you are one of the options. And all of a sudden, skepticism as a movement becomes known and becomes talked about on campus. And one example of this is the University of Melbourne. I think it was in early 2010. I'm sure you guys might be aware of a guy called Ray Comfort, who basically republished The Origin of Species with a special 50-page introduction where he talks about Darwin's inherent racism and the flaws in evolution. They were handing out, they basically targeted campuses around America, and eventually they made their way to Australia. And so they're handing out free copies of The Origin of Species with this little sort of deceptive, mostly plagiarized introduction by Ray Comfort. And we, at the Secular Society, I mean, not only could we, send out a quick tweet and get 10 people to rock up and start talking to them and arguing with them and questioning them, but we also had an opportunity to be the voice for the other side when there was an article written about it in our student newspaper. And we also managed to convince the Dean of Science at the University of Melbourne to do a talk for us, which was open to all students, which we called Answers to Creationist Nonsense. And it was actually around the same time as the Atheist Convention. I think PZ Myers just rocked up to it randomly. We didn't even invite him along, and that was quite entertaining. Secondly, and I think this might be my Bachelor of Arts talking here, but my sort of utopian vision of what a university should be in our society is that of a sort of bastion of cutting debate and the forefront of new knowledge. And this should be, I think, shared not just with the students who attend that university, but also for the wider society. It should sort of trickle down this new knowledge and this debate to the rest of society. And if universities are really like that, and I mean, it's probably debatable, I think a university skeptical or secular society has the potential, through the campaigns and through the events that they run on campus, to have an effect on the rest of society. But sort of what I wanted to talk a little bit about, it's quite tough to run a secular society, run a skeptical society. Being a student, I often say there's sort of three things you can do when you're at uni. One is get good grades, one is have a social life, and one is be involved in a club. And you really need to choose two of those three things. I won't tell you what ones I chose. Running a club was definitely one of them. Basically through the Freethought University Alliance, what we want to do is to help make it more of a possibility that students can have all of those three things. And sort of some of the initiatives that we are offering at the moment and that we're planning to offer in the future include basically, in Victoria, anyway, it's sort of a little bit different in every state. We've got someone in each state who's sort of looking after all of the clubs. Some of the things that we do is organise catch-ups between all of the presidents of the different clubs so they can get together, meet one another, talk about what campaigns they can do together across campus, hold joint events, and do all that sort of thing. We hope through the Alliance that we'll be able to offer funding. I think Deakin University actually just recently is trying to start up a secular society, and they've had a few troubles getting affiliated with their guild and having a stall at OWIC because they want to charge them a $500 fee to affiliate as a club and to have a stall in OWIC. And so the Freethought University Alliance is actually going to be paying about 70% of that for them just to help them get started. Some of the other sort of resources that we're developing at the moment and will be launched once we launch our new website is one of the things we've got is a speaker portfolio, which is basically, when I started at Melbourne University, I had to form all of these new relationships and networks with people who could come and give talks on our campus. And that was sort of a tough gig to sort of send out emails, do lots of reading, find out who would be appropriate to come and talk to you. And basically, I wanted to be able to pass that on to the next person who comes into the club and also share that with other clubs around the area. And so what we've developed is a speaker portfolio. We've got about 30 people from around Australia in different states, whether they're big names like Catherine Devney or Peter Singer, or just local activists who say that they agree with our values and are willing to participate for free in forums and debates and lectures and stuff on campus. And we've got a list of sort of their areas of expertise, and we've got a list of some of the previous talks they've given already. So that makes it really easy for a student leader who's just come into this position to be able to look and have some support to organise the next big event on campus. I wanted to also give a bit of a rundown about some of the sort of things. I haven't really discussed what we actually do as a club on campus. I mean, some of you guys sitting here with your beautiful University of Melbourne Secular Society t-shirts obviously know full well what you guys do on campus, but for anyone who doesn't, at least when I was at university, we were doing the University of Melbourne Secular Society, we had two sort of main goals. One was to be a sort of a social club where people can meet other people who are like-minded, make new friends and everything like that. So we would have pub nights, we would have parties. One of the events that we did that was very successful, that I was skeptical about at first, but eventually I got convinced that we should do it, was we had a flying spaghetti monster mixer where you would come dressed up as your favourite deity or religious figure. And it was a huge hit. We had lots of people come. I came dressed up as Adam from the Garden of Eden wearing only a leaf. I should have a photo. I mean, yeah, that was a really fun event. We've had debates on campus with the Christian Union. When I was with the club, we had one on almost a semesterly sort of basis, and they were really successful. I think it was, I mean, not only did I want to be able to have this debate brought up in the wider campus community, but also I thought it was important for us as atheists or us as skeptics to be able to hear from Christians themselves, what their worldview is, to prevent us from creating our own straw man sort of arguments and just talking amongst ourselves all the time. That's right. So basically, to sort of wrap up, I would like to encourage any non-students who are out here, who aren't part of a student group, to find out about what your local Freethought campus group is up to. Maybe go along to some of their lectures and maybe see if you can help out. Non-student skeptical groups as well can work together with skeptical groups to co-sponsor events, to mentor and provide continuity, and basically provide the benefit of the experience that you have to even also maybe provide a little bit of financial support. And I think if we want this movement to flourish, and if we want to create new opportunities for people outside of the skeptical community to learn about the skeptical community, to get involved and become active, I think supporting student groups, if you're not in a student group, is a really great way to do that. Also, by forming relationships with these groups, it means that when these students leave university and eventually graduate, which hopefully they all do, they know that there's a place that they can go to continue their activism, which is good for your membership too.
5 minutes left, Jason.
Thanks, and I'll leave that 5 minutes up to any questions or comments or discussion if you want to say thanks. Yep.
So you said at the start that there was, what, how many clubs you said when you first started?
Oh yeah, there was 10, so we now
10.
have
and how many of them?
21 now, so
21.
that's in about, so we've had an extra about 10 clubs start up since we've sort of been around. And I mean, some of these groups were sort of starting up already, and we've just been able to help them, provide them with advice, provide them with mock-up constitutions and all that sort of stuff. But sometimes we've actually gone out of our way to actually seek out students who are at universities who are part of the other skeptical sort of groups and sort of tell them about, hey, you want to start a campus group, we'll provide you with all this sort of resources, it'll be really fun, this is what we get up to, come check it out. And yeah, I mean, that's how the one at Deakin University started up. Yeah, and so, I mean, it was through the sort of the speaker list that we sort of have that groups like at Monash University and RMIT and the University of Melbourne, we've all sort of had similar speakers almost do a bit of a tour around the campus scene, like Carly Sturgis recently and Fiona Patton from the Australian Sex Party. So yeah, it's grown a lot. We've got about 7 universities left, and then we'll have a presence on I think every university in Australia, so that's kind of good. But some of these groups have a much bigger presence on their campus than others. Some of them are just sort of one person who's trying to get out there and sort of holding it all together. And one of the things that we want to do with the Alliance is help students come up with a bit of a succession plan so that they can, you know, I mean, we're at university, we're in there for 3 to 4 years. Often with campus groups, you find that it's quite active for those 3 to 4 years until that one person who was driving the thing graduates, and then it just all falls in a heap. And so we really want to encourage students to think about, you know, succession plans, teach them useful skills about how to manage volunteers and stuff like that. All of a sudden, some of these students are thrown into leadership positions, and they've never been in a leadership position before in their life. And so we, the beginning of the next Atheist Convention, we're going to be having a bit of a workshop with some of the students who will be in town for the convention to actually do some training workshops about leadership and about all those sort of things. Cool. So, yeah.
Okay, so do you know if there's a group at the University of South Australia?
Yes, there is. Yeah. It's one of those groups that's sort of held together by the one shining activist. Sort of, he's really, really nice guy as well.
I was just wondering, I've worked with them.
Yeah, well, one of the things we really are trying to help do is get faculty and staff in touch with the student groups, because that can be, because you're there for a longer period than the students. Even if the club winded up, you could sort of hold on to sort of their resources and their sort of you know, intellectual capital and help make it a bit easier if someone came along and wanted to start it back up again. So whether it's through the speaker portfolio, often we've got a lot of campus staff and faculty members and stuff like that on our list of people, even though they're not big names, they're people who are at the university and going to be there for a long period of time. So it helps if you're just coming into the role as a new president or a new secretary of a campus group to sort of know who's on your campus and who's supporting you. Yeah.
What's that called?
South Australian, University of South Australia Godless Society, I think that's what they call it. Yeah. We actually, I'll tell you a little anecdote, thinking maybe we still have time left, just want to fill out my space. At Monash University, they started up an atheist society, and also there were some other groups who wanted to start up a skeptical society. And I thought, great, you know, we definitely, I think it's excellent to separate that, because, you know, different angles reach different people. But the student union there wouldn't let them start up two different societies. They said they had to be one society because they were too. Even though they've got about 10 Christian clubs, they said that the skeptics and the atheists had to be one club. So they're now the Rationalist Association of Monash, and they're doing really good stuff as well. Yeah.
About time?
Yep.
Cool.
Done.
Any last minute questions?